You're listening to post-match of the Blue Room here, where it finished Arsenal 2, Everton 1. Once again, it couldn't be the end of a season without Everton falling foul to a pretty ludicrous VAR decision, and I'm sure, gentlemen, that we will go on to talk about that as the pod goes on. Joining me at the moment, we've got Les Roberts. We've got a welcome return to the pod as well on post-match of Rob Vera. Dave Downey should be joining us a little bit later on as well to offer his views. And like I mentioned in the intro there, lads, I will talk a little bit about, or we will go on to talk about the decision at the end and what led to Arsenal's 2-1 second goal in that 2-1 victory. But I want to start with us first, because I think actually today I thought it was a very good performance by Everton. I thought that we deserved at least a draw out of it. I thought we went there with a game plan, and it would have been very easy today for us to lie down and take the sort of annual pummeling that we get down at the Emirates. But Les, if I start with you first, overall, not a bad performance by the Blues, was it?
No, it was nice to see it, but I've not seen us go to Arsenal and play like sort of with that level of composure, defensive solidity. There was not much going forward, but it's kind of been the story of the season a bit, really, hasn't it? But yeah, I've not seen us play at Arsenal like that in a long time, especially when so much was riding on the game for them. It would have been a perfect opportunity for them to absolutely smack Everton out of sight like they usually do. But I think that whole I know the result was disappointing, but I think as you say, we deserved a draw out of that. And I think that was all down to the way Everton played. Arsenal were given everything they had. I think Everton just defended really well. Thought Jordan Pickford was brilliant again today. I thought the back four did well, apart from Ashley Young right at the end there, which again we'll go on to when we talk about their winning goal. But yeah, it was just nice to see Everton turn up on the last day without the flip flops on when it didn't mean anything. It looked like we did go there to try and upset Arsenal's party or potential party, and I think we did. We got to be happy with the performance there. The result wasn't great, but overall, if you look at the season as a whole, it's not been bad, and that performance was probably a reasonable way to sign off if the result we didn't go our way.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rob today as well, all the noise and all the story, like Les mentioned there, was around Arsenal and the potential slip up that Man City may have had. And I think probably the column inches in terms of Everton wasn't there. It wasn't going to be there. We weren't the story today, but I think for the fans going down there to see a performance, and I think as well, like I mentioned and like Les alluded to there, it would have been very easy for us to lay down and take that result lying down. But if anything, I think that it's almost seemed like we had a little bit of freshness to our game and a little bit of we could play without fear and we could play with that little bit of confidence, albeit fitting still within the Sean Dyche style and setup. But we had the Everton fans in the first half doing the Olays, and that was a sign of the supporters going down there and enjoying a last day of the season as opposed to the last few years where it's been horrible with that fear of relegation. Do you share Les's view that it was a very good performance under the circumstances around the fact that it wasn't our story today? It was about Man City and Arsenal. It was about the final day title decider, if you like. And do you think that we should have got something out of the game and we deserved that point?
Yeah, I think on balance, it's hard to deny that we were good for a draw there. Though, I mean, Arsenal's winning goal, and this is probably the deepest analysis I'll have for this actual game, but like it's one of those things where the VAR decision is so comically bad and wrong and against every kind of precedent that like precedent with VAR is like trying to nail Jello to a wall. And so whatever, the VAR decision's so bad. But my only counter to that would be that the Ashley Young pass was so comically bad as well. So dumb and so terrible and poorly timed and whatever, that it almost cancels the dumbness of the VAR part out, and so whatever. I mean, I didn't go into the game today thinking too much about the result, but that's because Everton have given us the luxury over, because of the way they've ended this season, because of how bad the rest of the league is, because of a variety of things. We were in a position where we haven't had to think about results for a few weeks. And so I think that they had every reason to go in and really just kind of, half-ass it, and they didn't, and credit to them for that. I would also say though that, for anyone who has really enjoyed maybe even just these last few weeks since we got safe in terms of, wow, Everton's still playing really hard, clean sheets, getting a goal, getting a couple goals here and there. And it's like, yeah, I think that when you have the pressure, what you're seeing is when the pressure is off, sometimes you can just relax and just play football. And I think that there's a little that's part of this, which I think it makes the larger point that if you can spend less portions of your season going through these long dry stretches and you're putting all this pressure on yourself, then maybe you can play freer and then build that momentum and then build a platform for actually, pushing on to something. I mean, we're way far from that. And obviously we'll go on to talk about what the summer is going to be or is not going to be for Everton. But I think at the end of the day that there's lessons to be learned about, hey, yeah, if you can take the earlier you can take pressure off yourself in regards to surviving in the Premier League, I think it gives you these opportunities to just go out and play and really build on something. I wish we could have done a little earlier in the season, but on balance, yeah, like the points return, even these stupid deductions aside, is more than I think most of us could have expected, despite the weird journey getting there. And so all credit to Sean Dyche and the squad for enduring despite all these distractions. And I think that today's match, in a lot of ways, the VAR and Ashley Young parts aside, I think was a good account in terms of this group finishing a season the way that they've kind of largely finished it over the last several weeks.
Absolutely, yeah. And Dave Downey joins us now. And Dave, prior to you coming on the call with us, we were just talking, Les, Rob, myself, about how we felt that a draw was probably deserved today and how it seemed there was a little bit of a shackles off, if you like, and a bit of a relaxation in Everton's play, knowing that they were effectively safe. I'm just looking at the table now, Dave, and it seems that 27 points would have kept you safe this year, with Luton finishing in 18th on 26. I think that we've talked ad nauseum in shows this year about what, we've talked in the past about what points would be needed. And it just goes to show that I think regardless of what had happened in the previous 2 or 3 games, Everton would have been comfortable regardless, because it's been a pretty poor league this season in terms of quality. But in terms of that game, Dave, do you agree with Les and with Rob that we will put a good account of ourselves up there and probably reflected the season as a whole for Everton? We've put up a real good fight at times, and although at times of the season we had our hands in our heads a lot of the time and scratching our heads at certain decisions, over a 38-game period, we've actually done brilliant. And like I said, that showing at the Emirates probably reflected that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it was a microcosm of a lot of what we played this season, I thought. And that is play well, get the ball into the final third and just be completely blunt, because there were times there, particularly you'll remember towards the end of the game, where Decore is screaming for the ball from Shemiti, I think it was, who just absolutely cocks it up, and we've got 4 lads running up there. That I think should be a definition of the way in which Dyche has played here. If we can get some sort of counter-attacking style of football going, Everton will do really well with that. But the fact that we didn't have the sort of know-how and the players there that could actually do that when they needed to, it's really frustrating to watch. And the fact that it was a game that really didn't mean much to us at all. There was plenty in it, I think, and obviously only just come on, I don't know if the guys agree with this, but there was plenty there that I looked like thinking, do you know what, if we stick with this, then we should be relatively okay next season. Obviously, there's the big names there that we'll end up talking about a hell of a lot in the next few weeks and months to come across the summer, in terms of whether we'll still have them or not. But by and large there, I think you've gone, and when it could have easily been a day where it was just, let's go down there for the laugh. When me and Les went down to Spurs in the summer a couple of years ago, we just went down there and it was a laugh, it was a party, and we ended up drawing the game 2-2. No one particularly cared about the score. Us going down there and putting in the performance we did there, I think our team and Dyche and the club itself deserves immense credit, given how hard this season's been for us. You would have been well forgiven for going down there and thinking, you know what, I'm going on a plane as soon as this game finishes on 90 minutes. I'm getting on my holidays right now. But we didn't. We went down there and put in a decent performance, and defensively in particular as well. Arsenal, who are still thinking they can win the Premier League there, found it really difficult to get past us, and that's an immense credit for us. Not just the fact that Man City had basically pissed it after 2 minutes. Arsenal still wanted to win that game just in case the West Ham were able to get it back. And for us to be able to say that we deserve the draw there is a massive credit to us.
Yeah, I think just to pick up on that, Dave, if you contrast it with that game last day of the season when we went to Man City away and got absolutely panelled 5-0. Again, I think that was one of the rare occasions in the last 4 or 5 seasons where nothing was actually riding on the game. It was fine for us. But yeah, I think as you say, if you look at Everton could have turned up today and just thrown the towel in quite easily. It's something that teams like across the decades have done. It's not a new phenomenon. Everton sort of like just phone it in on the final day. It's been happening for years. So I think it is. I think I've got to give the manager and the players a lot of credit for going and turning out that display against a really good Arsenal team who have pushed Man City all the way. You can't really underestimate how good a performance that was because, as you say, they were desperate to win that game. Mm-hmm. There might have been a little bit, maybe something that took away from Arsenal's game with the fact that they did have that added pressure on them. Maybe they weren't quite themselves today, but they're still a very, very good side. I think they had 21 shots against us today, and we had 5. Under normal circumstances, Everton conceded about 6 out of that 21, don't they?
Do you know what I thought was really interesting was the ridiculous decision given for Jesus to score at the end there through the handball.
Yeah, I think ridiculous.
Ridiculous. But can you imagine? Can you imagine there that Man City would have needed Arsenal not to score? They would have needed Everton getting a draw, and that goes and happens. It would have been the definition of VAR this year.
I mean, it could very much have been a case of Michael Oliver really, really making that about himself there.
Yeah, and he did really anyway, didn't he? When he's gone over and not giving it. It's ridiculous. I'm just thankful that it happened then. I sort of sat there watching it thinking, this is unbelievable. It's got really angry for 30 seconds and then thought, let's hope that one we start the season with where it goes on our side instead. Do you know what I mean?
But you know what? I'll jump in at that point and say I think we've put off the handball / Arsenal goal for long enough now. I think we've gone 10 minutes into the show. We're trying my hardest not to bring it up and mention it, but we've got to talk about it, Rob, because look, for me, it's a ludicrous decision. It's come off his arm quite blatantly, and does Michael Oliver know that a certain Mr. Masters is in the stands and maybe wants a grandstand finish? I don't know. There's my little tin hat theory for the for the case of for 5 minutes on the pod. But prior to that, I think you mentioned this earlier, Rob. Ashley Young should never be playing that ball across the
No, it's so dumb.
It is, and those of you who are listening and those of you on here, joining me today will know one of the first things you get taught when you're a young football and you first start playing the game, don't play it across the box. Now, granted, it wasn't across the box, but you're playing it across to Gabriel Jesus, who is one of the quickest, if not the quickest players in the Premier League, and Arsenal are probably one of the quickest, youngest teams in the Premier League. So if we combine the two things together, Rob, and sort of analyse it now, what was your view at the end there with the second goal?
I mean, look, if we're going to just take it in a vacuum of just the incident and the decision, I mean, it's I don't know. I think that I'm the first to acknowledge that I do not have the detailed borderline photographic memory that some of my other friends do for every incident like this in this season, especially with Everton. But I will say though that it's been my impression is that it's been pretty consistent the way that the Premier League has ruled in regards to incidents that look just like that, regardless of, these kind of ideas of intention or whatever, that if it's part of that buildup and it's, in a certain part of the arm, I keep hearing this thing about, like the t-shirt line, like where is that? Whatever. I think, or the short sleeve line, I can't remember, but the bottom line is that that's the most maddening thing about VAR, because that's the technology is really just a camera, and a camera that can show you things at angles and put lines on the screen. There's nothing inherently flawed about the technology. It is this decision that goes against all of the other precedent only means precedent if it's something that is established and then reinforced from that point on. Otherwise, it's just blatant randomness and inconsistency. That's the problem with VAR. And this was an example of it today. I said earlier that the ridiculousness of the decision is probably, counterbalanced perfectly by the ridiculousness of Ashley Young's decision to make that stupid pass. And but as I said, I think I posted this before we started recording today, there's something fitting about Everton's season ending on a day where you've got a weird, rash Ashley Young decision of some kind, and you've got VAR with, the league putting their thumb on the scale. And that's just kind of been the way it's been this season. I'm almost numb to it. It's so baked in now. Like it's watching professional wrestling less when you're young, and you just kind of expect that it's going one way, and but baked in is going to be some match, the official looking the other way out of the ring when the illegal hit happens. Like, it's just I've kind of internalized that these types of decisions, Warren, they're bad, but it's so obvious that I just don't feel anything for it anymore. So I don't know. It sucks.
Ashley Young owes him a pint, by the way, because the fact we're talking about that instance, that was horrendous from Ashley Young. It was the most horrendous. Ashley Young pass attempt than Ashley Young we've ever had, and he's just been given a 1-year contract as well.
Dave. Just so we're clear, guys, and Dave, you said it before about the way we've been playing, and this being kind of like, if we can, this is a template you can use moving forward to stay at a relatively stable place in the league. But that all presupposes that there's a Jared Branthwaite that's still here, or that there's still a, think of him what you will, but an Onana around. And, is Idrissa Gueye going to still be this good another year later? And that's the thing that is most scary is, I'm sorry, we're diverting from the VAR decision really fast, but guys, the VAR stuff is not going to, unless they fundamentally change that system, it's going to continue to be this way. The question is our squad going to be able to withstand another season of that, given the defections we're almost certainly likely to see, and the complete lack of any clarity about what the squad's going to look like moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's the big kind of concern for me, is that you would hope that next season, having been given a 1-year contract, I can't see why the club did do that. Because he can't play in a couple of positions. He's not a great player. He's old. He does get caught out, but he can play in a number of positions. I would hope that next season he is used maybe final 20 minutes of a couple of games. He's just dropped in as and when.
But why did that decision even need to be made now, Les? Is there some reason that Everton had to announce that they were absolutely offering this guy when I'm not sure. Is Ashley Young in such high demand that we have to get him locked down right now?
There was a queue of clubs apparently.
Yeah, there was. It might just be one of those things like there is every year where it comes to this time of year, doesn't it, where clubs have got to announce their sort of free agent list or their out of contract list, and maybe it just came to that point where it might have been leaked early as well, so the club thinking we've got to possibly do the right thing here and announce it ourselves rather than one of the hipster sort of journos on Twitter announcing it. So maybe it was something to do with that. But I just want to go back to, we touched on that. No, we have, because Rob, the thing is, we need to consider these things going into the summer, and you're absolutely right. And I think regardless of how the individual game was today, the summer plans would have been in everyone's mind the moment we stayed up and we guaranteed our survival. So you're absolutely right to bring it forward and use it as a talking point. But just going back to Ashley Young, Les, and, it was a horrific pass. We know that. But I actually thought, and you mentioned this before, the back four was exceptional again today with the goalkeeper as well. And it gave us a really good platform to work from. And just talking about the players that I thought and personally played really well today, I thought, it goes without saying with Branthwaite, doesn't it? There was a moment where I think it was Havertz. There was a mistake made, and he went toe-to-toe with Havertz and just got ahead of him. He recovered really well from a little mistake he'd made, otherwise Havertz would have been through. I think Tarkowski's just a word on him and playing every single Premier League game this year.
Just on that tackle he put in on Martinelli, I think it was. That was outstanding.
Yeah, outstanding. Branthwaite or Tarkowski?
No, Tarkowski.
Tarkowski.
Martinelli.
I think to have him playing every single minute of every Premier League game this year, or bar like I think he came off against Burnley with like 2 minutes to go. I think it's been massive for a club that's had its injury problems and injury record we've had the last few seasons. But one player for me today I thought was magnificent, and I probably looked at him and thought, where's that been for the last few months, was Abdoulaye Doucouré. I thought some of the runs he made forward today was absolutely brilliant, and we just needed that bit of quality behind him to play him through at certain times. I thought he was outstanding alongside Dom, who did the thankless task again up front. But I think certainly as a pair working together, they looked a lot more threatening today than probably they have been, especially away from home for a long time. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Des, but I thought he was brilliant, Doucouré, today.
Yeah, I thought he did have a good game. He wasn't quite his usual erratic self, was he? It's like when he took a touch, it seemed to like stick, and sometimes like bounces off his shin, and then the next touch he'll like volley in a 40-yard screamer first touch. But yeah, I thought he played decent today. I thought Calvert-Lewin was good again. He's had a really strong end to the season. I thought his play up front, it's a thankless task, as we always talk about. And I thought he did that really well, albeit we didn't create too many chances. It's a funny one with me for Doucouré though, because I'm not sure we can go into another season with him as the kind of second striker. We've got Neil Maupay coming back, so you never know. Could be like a new signing. Yeah, I'm not sure. I just think he's a little bit too inconsistent. And again, as Rob said before about some of these players, like I think he said about Garner, it's another year on now. So this squad is getting a little bit older. Players like that who have been key for us the last few seasons are getting a little bit older. Not sure if we need to sort of freshen things up front really to get more out of the attack than we have been this season. But yeah, overall he's had a pretty good season. He missed a fair whack with an injury, but he's been a key player for us. I don't know if I want him to be such a key player sort of going into next season. I think again he's another one who would sooner sort of drop in the team as and when we need. I think I've seen things saying, if we play someone else as like in the 10 spot, we can put like Doucouré back in the midfield. But the thought of that absolutely terrifies me. Thought about Doucouré being anywhere near our own box, trying to control the ball and pass it, absolutely terrifies me. So yeah, I'd like to keep him in that position. But again, I think to be to build on this season, I think we need a little bit more next season than having him there. Might be a bit unfair, but that's just where I am.
No, I think I tend to agree. And Dave, if we go to that dream scenario that Les has just mentioned there of Maupay returning and Doucouré dropping back, which is the stuff of dreams, if that does happen, he probably replaces that midfield spot of one player I think that we're all expecting to leave, and that's Amadou Onana, who again I thought today, I know me and you, Dave, have talked extensively on shows about him being a bit of an enigma. We can see flashes of brilliance with him, and other times you look at him and you think, not quite sure. We've said about how the fact he's still a young player, and when he matures, perhaps he could be this very good player. I think for me, the overriding thing with Onana today and as the season as a whole was, I think when you need that something a little bit extra, you look to your players who you think are going to give you that. Defensively, obviously, Branthwaite's done that. When we've needed big saves, Jordan Pickford's been outstanding, not just this season, but for 2 or 3 seasons, if not 4 or 5 seasons now. And whilst I think Onana did really well in certain points and shows real intelligence in his play, just the way he turns his body and he drives the ball forward, at other times I'm just left wondering, thinking, where's the real, there's talk of you going to Bayern Munich and Barcelona. Like, what are they seeing that I'm not? Are they seeing the fact that with better players around him, he'll flourish? Are they seeing the fact that he's still a young lad, so eventually he will mature into a much better player? At the moment, whilst I do think he will move on and we'll probably look to recoup our money for him, I'm not sure at this moment in time, Dave, and this is not me saying down the line it won't happen, but I'm not sure at this moment in time I can necessarily see the brilliance at a consistent level that would enable him or sort of garner that attention from some of those clubs I've mentioned abroad.
I think that's really interesting you make that point, particularly today, because there were times that I looked at him and I thought, you can tell why this fella is regarded as going to be one of the best defenders across your best midfielders across Europe, or eventually because you looked them against Partey against Odegaard as well, and he could get with them, he could mix with them, he could pass amongst them. There was a time when he ran right across the midfield and skinned a couple of them and all. I was sitting there watching, where's this been all season? But then other times I'm looking at him thinking, just give us a decent square pass. Don't try something outrageous, because we're not the club that does that. That's where I think that word enigma, what we've used quite a lot. I think that is the closest you can describe him at, to be honest, because when he plays how he did today, there was a touch of freedom in what he did today. And I don't think it'd be a coincidence that Dice had said that to him. You know, go and express yourself a little bit today, given what kind of game it was. And when he did, I thought he looked brilliant at times. But then you think you're looking at a different player 5 minutes later, and that's what's really, really frustrating with him. You know, you look at him and the physical attributes he's got. He's quick. He's got everything you would hope for. You know, if you were playing Football Manager and you've seen everything, all the attributes they've got, you'd be like, yeah, he's going to start in my midfield. And if anyone wants to buy him, they'd be paying over 100 million quid for him. But he just can't seem to find that level of consistency for us. Now, the one incident where, or the one sort of common narrative that we've used a lot this season, is because of everybody in and around him is the reason why he's not getting to the level in which we all think he potentially can. But I think today was a really big example of, well, I had just a game was fine around him today. Decore was much better, but then other times you think you'd typically yourself where, you know, it'll come off a shin and go out to play. That can happen with the way Decore plays at times. And I thought you've got a decent group around you. You know, you've got a game that isn't really much pressure. And that was when I personally think we see more out from than we have this season. And that concerns me, because I'm thinking, if this is the only time that he's ever going to show up to games, how much of a fear is that when we're going through, you know, knife edge stuff that we needed to keep ourselves in the Premier League 4 or 5 games ago? So I think we said last week when we were doing the part of one of the shows, Les, didn't we? And I said I would absolutely take it if we could get the money that we paid for him back. I'd take it. And that might be a bold statement to many fans, because, well, ultimately we can't, because they get 10% or something, don't they, if we sell them on? So we'd have
There's
to go
20 or
20.
more
I
than
mean, we've got to go and sell them for in excess of 40 million quid. Then I'm not sure who takes that, with the evidence or the lack of evidence they've got and how he's done with us.
I think
Rob,
my,
sorry, I was just gonna say, Rob, actually, because I've not heard your sort of opinion on him much, as somebody who we've talked about a lot on the show. What do you feel about Onana?
Well, Warren, you I think kind of brought up the notion at the beginning about is maybe the idea that he's going to be the kind of player that looks better when he's surrounded by better players, and the answer is yes. And he's not the first player of quality like that. There are certain players that have certain traits and certain characteristics, and we certainly, like, the reason Onana's value perception is high outside of Everton, or or in places sometimes for those who are not watching every minute of him, I guess, is that a lot of his raw metrics are still, pretty good. He is young. He has got physical traits that you cannot teach. They are just there. You know what I mean? Like, he has things that I think, really talented developmental clubs will look at and say, there's a lot to work with here, and I can look beyond the overall dysfunction at Everton and look at him as a player and project what I believe is going to be something, whatever. And they may not be right. But that happens all the time. That's just how sport works. But I think Onana is judged a lot on, what he displays in some ways, inconsistent as it may be. I think they also acknowledge the situation he's in. And here's what I'd point out. This is my one annoyance with, I think, the way that we talk about Onana. And I don't even think we realize we do it sometimes. But, like, the narrative about Onana is that, well, he's talented, but I don't see it, or I don't see it enough, or it's not consistent enough, and that he flatters to deceive, and that he'll have a good game or two, and then you don't notice him much. Well, everything I just said could be applied to literally every other Everton player outside of Jordan Pickford and the two center halves, maybe. And I would even argue that Tarkowski has had some bad stretches in this season. He makes up for it with his availability, and he's overall been one of our very best players. But my point generally is that we talk about Onana and we say that he's inconsistent and disappointing and only shows flashes. Well, that could be levied at everyone else in this squad. Doucouré, we were just talking about, has had long stretches of the season where he's been awful.
Interrupt, Rob. Sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but do you think, I agree with you in the sense that you could label that at any Everton player, but do you think the fact that he has signed for relatively big money for us and the fact that he is talked about as someone who could go and play for one of these leading clubs in Europe, that's naturally going to bring its own pressure? Do you think that it's labelled at him more for that reason rather than, say, a Dwight McNeil or a Jack Harrison?
Yeah, because there's this idea that a really talented player who is clearly not as developed as he's going to be, what's going to happen is if he's at a place like Everton, he's going to look awesome, and it's going to be so apparent that he's going to be great. And then he'll go somewhere else and he'll succeed and whatever.
Rob, sorry to interrupt on that, Rob. Just when you've said there to go elsewhere, I think that's a really interesting predicament that both ourselves and him will have here. Because as much as we've spoken about, he'll end up at Real Madrid or Barcelona, Bayern, City, those sides that we think or we've been told he's probably capable of doing. We've seen small flashes of it. How does that come about that we don't do that? How it's a silly thing to ask. How would Everton get rid of him? And also the flip side of that, how does he become as good at Everton? Because like I said, all season long we've looked at a midfielder who hasn't looked great at all. Is that, in your opinion, purely because of what he's got in and around him?
Yeah, but I think the general point, yes, it is part of what he's got around him, because every other midfielder can be described exactly as you just described Onana. I mean, they've all been varying degrees of average, bad, average, good, for a couple games, and then, injured. Like, that's basically the story of Everton's entire midfield. I think Ghana has probably pleasantly surprised me on some level this season in a way that I didn't expect, but he's had his rough stretches too. But again, I think the point I'm making about Onana is that I think the difference between the disappointment we feel in him versus others is, to your point, Dave, like the money, the expectation he'll go to a big club and whatever. And here's the thing, Dave, I don't know that he's going to end up at Real Madrid. I do believe, though, that there's no way he is playing for Everton after this summer. And I view him at this point, I don't have a huge emotional attachment to him. I've liked some of his games, but whatever, he's an asset. So for me, I would be disappointed if we only in this inflationary market, I would be very disappointed if we only got back what we paid for him, because as a prospect, regardless of how you feel about the performances, as a prospect, he has all of the physical intangibles, the pedigree of playing for Belgium, the kind of the trajectory you can project based off of some of his raw metrics and stuff. Again, flawed as he may be, he is an asset that ought to be in a market like this worth significantly, to me, more than we paid for him. Could be wrong. I've been wrong. We'll see.
Les, last word on Onana to you.
Oh God, really? Yeah. I think, without wanting to try and sort of second guess what the player himself thinks, I think he has an elevated idea of how good he is. I think he saunters through games thinking he's the best player on the park without actually doing much. That's just my sort of view on him. And I'm going to go back to the penalty, because I think that compounded everything about a sort of modern player.
Looking forward to summer, Ellis.
Oh, the penalty.
No, but
I knew the
fact
penalty.
the fact that he thought he was good enough to take a penalty like that. Now, I mean, it wasn't even that. It was sort of the sort of contempt for the keeper, that you could hit a penalty like that and he wouldn't save it. I just think there's a lot of style over substance there for me. And that's my main issue with it. The price tag was big for Everton. The expectation was big for Everton. I don't think he's delivered on that. Again, that could be a product of the team he's playing in, the players he's playing with, the manager who's managing him. But, if someone is going to be really good, you want to see sort of tangible evidence of that. And I don't think we have. And the worry for me is now, like as you alluded to before, Dave, that sell-on clause could really knacker us with the amount we get for him. We could actually potentially lose money if we don't get let's say 50 million. We could actually lose money on that deal.
And Les, you make a good point, but I may slightly disagree with the way we arrive there, which is to me, the more likely reason we get less money for Onana than, let's say, replacement level club, you can name whomever. Let's just say a club that's not in the crazy, weird ownership financial stakes we may get less for Onana just simply because we're not in position to bargain or negotiate because of how stressed we are. That's probably more likely. And I'm sad to already be thinking in those terms because I've already been making out my starting 11s next season with Michael Keane partnering Tarkowski. So it's like I am of the way I look at it is that we really just don't know what these I think I'm arguing from the standpoint of what an asset he would be in a vacuum or should be in a vacuum of a normal market, but we're not going to be dealing with a normal market because of our predicament as a club financially.
Yeah, I've been doing the same with next season's team, but I've been partnering Michael Keane with Calvert-Lewin. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Do you know the one thing that's just come? I was just going to say, sorry, just one thing that came to my mind there is if he's got a load of crap around him, which, a lot of people would say in general, without going into them individually, that in the general case, then surely a top-class midfield player who is being bigged up to the way he should be performing a hell of a lot better. And us sitting here saying, I feel really sorry for him because he's got nobody who can commit to the level anywhere near what he is. I don't see that with him. I think what Les said is spot on there. You've got somebody, I think, who's come to our club and seen that as a stepping stone for what happens next. And I think in his mind, when I've watched him, he's already got that in his head thinking, do you know what? I just need to show myself. I'll stroll around like I'm the man here. He's always cheering up the fans and things like that, which, obviously has its place because a lot of fans love that sort of thing. Slapping the Everton badge and all that.
He's no Tommy Gravison, is he?
No, but the thing is, Les, you've got substance. I know it's funny, but he had substance to do that because that's the kind of player he is. With Onana, I think is he being paid to do that? Do you know what I mean? Is he just doing that because he thinks it's a positive effect on how he's going to move on elsewhere?
Are we sure this is not a generational bias, guys? I'm only throwing that out.
You might, Rob, you might be right there in what you're saying, but. Yeah. What you guys are talking about there, to just like put a switch on in my mind that if you're as good as he potentially is, how he was when we bought him, how we've seen him play for this country, then when you've got what you have around you, you're the person that stands out. You're the person that rises to those occasions. How often have you seen that? Probably counts in less than a few fingers, to be honest with you, let alone hands.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say on this, guys, is that I think we have sometimes some stilted notions of what does a winner look like and what does is confidence a thing that sometimes is fake it till you make it? Is it just does every athlete have to arrive at their confidence in the exact same way? And I don't know, but I'll just say this: all of these top level athletes are typically delusional about their own abilities in regards to confidence. That's part of what makes them have the mindset that they need to become elite athletes. And I'm not saying that Onana is going to become one of the very best footballers in the world. He has certain traits that, if pointed in the right direction and developed in the right environment, yes, there's a lot of good reasons to bet on him. But what I'm saying is that sometimes, even the biggest winners in the world in this sport and in every sport have failed several times. They're remembered for their wins, but they've also failed, times as well. There is no you're a winner when everything goes right. And I know that penalty is going to drive us all insane forever. We're probably going to, who knows what happens. I don't know. That's part of supporting Everton. And by the way, bad moments in penalty shootouts fallouts happened way before Onana got here, and they will continue long after he is gone.
Yeah, we are crap at pens. Full stop.
But again, I hear you guys. The last thing I'll say, and I was probably, I think at times I'm a little sensitive to it because I think we do a lot of tone policing and a lot of fun policing with how players are allowed to celebrate or how they're allowed to interact with the crowd. You know, we, on the one hand, hate that players don't make themselves available to us enough. And then when they make themselves kind of try to connect or gin up the crowd, then it's like, well, gosh, that's a little overdoing it. And I think that, you know, whether someone like Onana has an inflated view of himself, I think is without question. Of course he does. He has a massive ego or whatever. He's got a long way to go. I think all those things are true. At the same time, I personally don't subscribe to the theory that, you know, footballers have to, like, you know, yes, there are boundaries, but footballers don't have to pick a one size fits all manner of celebrating or, you know, connecting with the fans and the crowd. And when I asked the question before about kind of generational and I say this as a guy in his mid-40s, I know that my notions and what I thought of growing up in sport and what players ought to celebrate like and how they ought to be has changed partially because I realized that younger people don't think in the same terms, and the way that they you know have, you know, maybe an inflated ego because they're using that as a way to motivate themselves. I don't even know. Onana's got his particular approach. He'll either succeed or he'll fail. But for us, and that's what's most important for Everton, I hope we get a really good price for him this summer because we really, really need the money.
Yeah, it's just quickly on that. It's that peculiar Everton thing, isn't it? Whereby we will absolutely love a player who runs around for 90 minutes, regardless of ability levels. You run around, if you come off sweating buckets, it's like, yeah, we're fully behind you. If a player doesn't do that,
I think that's old fashioned now, though, Les. I completely agree with you. These days, though,
I still think it's a thing because if you look at what gets the Goodison crowd up, still, it is a crunching tackle. It's not someone doing a Cruyff turn or someone nutmegging someone. Not that that happens very often, but it's the same stuff. I don't know. It's just a very Everton thing, isn't it? And if a player comes in who doesn't do that, we're on the back foot. If a player comes in and doesn't do that, and we think, oh, he's a bit full of himself, we're even more on the back foot.
Yeah.
So it's probably a lot of it will be down to us and our just inherent sort of view of how we see what a footballer should look like. But, you know, he's a very good footballer. You know, let's not make any bones about that.
I'm going to
I just want Fellaini. I want Fellaini back, guys. That's all I want is Marouane Fellaini.
I'm going to channel my inner Matt Jones here because I think somewhere when Matt listens to this, he's going to be screaming, "Warren, move on! You've talked far too much about Amadou Onana there." So
Onana, yeah,
I'm just looking at the league table here, lads, and we finished the season in 15th position. We've finished sort of top of that bottom group of teams, if you like, and I've heard this word a lot. In real terms, we've finished on 48 points, which would have put us just below Brighton on goal difference, so probably in 12th place. There was a point today, I think, at a time when we were ahead, and we would have finished the season in 10th. I think that's incredible, considering the context of the season, with the points, with the players we've had to get rid of, with what we've had to sell. I know that we're going to go on to talk in shows right throughout the summer. I think, Dave, that you've said that normally you're struggling to talk about things over the summer. I think you're not going to have a quiet time, mate. I think there's going to be a lot of editing going on and a lot of podcasts being put out. But just on that, I mean, look, we all know that in an ideal world, 15th isn't acceptable for a club like Everton. At the same token, you're not entitled to anything in football. And, you know, I know that's a bit of a cliche use, but it's true. You know, you're only as good as the performances you put on the pitch, the players you've got, the manager you've got, and the setup as a whole as the club you are. And Everton, quite frankly, have been a mess at a lot of times. I agree with Andy Burnham. I don't know if you saw what he said this week. He said I can start seeing chinks of light at the end of the tunnel, and I do agree with that. And I think I'm looking at this season thinking hopefully they're the green shoots of recovery now to Everton being short term at least a solid, compatible, hard working but decent Premier League team And then with the adage of the new stadium coming the season after, along with increased, we hope, revenue, along with new ownership, along with all these things that we talk about, what makes a great football club or what makes a well-run football club. I've certainly seen the start of that. And I think that the last 6, 7 games have helped me to believe that. The previous 15 before that didn't. I was well lost in my own head about where we were going to end up. And it was, it was disaster time and all this. But, I think over a 38 game period, unless this has always stuck in my head since before the ball was kicked. You said over 38 games, this manager knows how to keep a team in the league. The obvious challenge is going to come when we are a decent team again, or hopefully we become a decent team again, and how we push on to the next level. I still think personally that's a season or two away. That might come in a season or two. But in terms of right here, right now, this season going into next, Les, what do you feel in a sentence? How do you sum up this season in a sentence for you, and how we finished, going into that last game today and then ultimately coming out and finishing in 15th place?
I can probably sum it up in 2 words as unnecessarily frustrating. I think to have that, I know the 15 game run in which we didn't win a game, but we did get a few decent draws, some tough games, and that for me, that sort of peaked at Chelsea, like I've said on other podcasts. And then I think if we would have had anyone running the club, we probably would have sacked Sean Dyche at that point, because the panic button would have been hit. And I think we were quite fortunate that we didn't have anyone running the club, so we couldn't do that. We sort of stumbled across this more by luck than design, really. And he turned it round, and the players turned it round. I just think you've got to take it over the 38 games, and to finish the season well above the relegation zone, not just in real terms, but in the terms we've got with the points deductions, to have pulled the team through having, those points deductions, the 10 points hanging over us for 3 months. That's gonna be. I think I likened it in the past to sort of when you've done a load of work and you forget to save it and it disappears. It's like they've had like 3 or 4 wins taken off them, or 3 wins and a draw taken off them for 3 months there, and they're like, it's so hard to pick yourself up after that. So I think he's done a really good job. I think and this is a team that's got progressively worse since that first relegation sort of threatened team with Frank Lampard. I think that it's a team that has been shorn of good talent each season. The big challenge next season now is replicating this season, really. Hopefully we'll have no more points deductions and things like that, so we can just sit on an even keel. Whatever points we win, they're the points we finish on. But I think it's going to be really difficult to sort of have, and it sounds weird to say when we finish 15th, but have as good a season as we have this season, because it does feel like we've somehow overachieved with where we've got to this season. Brighton are the Premier League's darlings, because they'll bend over and they'll sell their players for millions. They're in the black, the brilliance. What a brilliantly run club. They finished, in real terms, as you say, they finished above us on goal difference, and now manager's getting off. So I've no doubt that they are a brilliantly run club. They've got a brilliant setup as far as scouting, taking players on, selling players is concerned. So for Everton to finish below them basically on goal difference, it's mad. And I think we might struggle to replicate this season, which sounds pathetic, but it's going to be really difficult again next season. Because
Les, do you realize the scariest thing you just said was that the difference between the worst run club in the Premier League and maybe the best run club below the clubs that are allowed to win things?
Yeah.
Is what
it's
goal
4
difference?
goals, by the way.
I guess my
4
point
goals.
being that, like,
It's
when
Chelsea.
we get Everton, fixed, when we get Everton fixed, guys, fixed may look kind of like Brighton's best outcome or worst outcome. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
That's your reward for being a well-run.
Yeah,
so it's like, in that
coming,
light, it's like, well,
coming back to you with this, Rob. I mean, again, looking at the table there, if take points deductions out of it, we're 22 points or 21 points above the relegation zone there, and we're coming up to the next weekend. It'll be the year since that Bournemouth game, and I'll never forget walking out that stadium, and everyone around me was obviously so relieved. But I just remember walking down County Road in a real daze because for me, the relief was just so palpable that I just needed to walk by myself. I didn't want to converse or talk to anybody. I just needed that little 5-10 minutes just to process what I mean, football's not the be all and end all. We all know that, but for something that means so much to all of us, I had to process something that I'd just witnessed and that was so sort of traumatic and relieving at the same time. To go forward a year and to not have to go into that game today without a care in the world in reality, with
great.
not having the stress of the last 2 weeks, and I myself said at the start of this season, I'd bite anyone's hand off now just for a comfortable mid-table finish without any worries, without any concerns. And we've done that. We've absolutely done that this year. And putting next season to one side, I mean, again, the same question to you. How do you assess in a sentence or two, or in a few words, this season?
Ooh.
It's a loaded question. I get that, but it's been
scary.
I think
you know what? Three words: scary and boring somehow all at once. Meaning that a lot of, if you just took away all the context of what was going on off the pitch, there was just a lot of forgettable football for the most part this season, outside of because what I'll remember the season for is the Derby win at home, right? Like that's the big takeaway. That was absolutely positively the highlight of my season. And that's kind of what it's got to be when you're in this state as a club, when you're not really competing for things. It's staying in the league, winning a few games that create memories. Like that's like, and to judge this season, I thought it was scary. It got scary when we went 15, 16 matches without winning a game. And it's so funny because we all agree that Dyche deserves credit for the way we've closed out the season. I'm one of his biggest skeptics, and I absolutely agree that he deserves a lion's share of the credit. I also think that any functioning club would have sacked him going that long without winning a game, given the fact that there wasn't a lot of evidence that things were great outside of that stretch. Like it was that was how we arrived there. Like you can agree he should have probably been sacked in a normal circumstance, but these weren't normal circumstances. And this probably validates that Sean Dyche absolutely is his brand, which is in less than ideal circumstances, I'm the guy who finds a way. And he did. And it was ugly and it was weird to watch at times, but this final stretch was a lot of fun. I forget when we broke our winless streak, Les. Who were we playing when we broke that winless?
It was Burnley. Burnley when you were
It was bookended by Burnley.
Was it when I came?
It was when you were over, yeah.
And I totally forgot that.
We were all saying we were going to pay for your flights for the rest of the next,
that's interesting how that works.
Season at Goodison, yeah.
But to kind of finish on what Les kind of talked about at the end there in terms of the arc of the season, and what you kind of said too, Warren, I would, though, I can't totally separate what happens next, because what I will say is that in normal circumstances, even normal for Everton, this finishing run to a season would have been the exact thing we always talk about wanting. Hey guys, wouldn't it be great if we went on a good run near the end of the season and built a platform, remember the word platform going into next season? And to Les's point about just wishing we could finish the same, hey, if we could finish 15th for the next 3 seasons, I would sign up for that, because I think we need literally time of stabilization, cleaning the books, getting out of whatever this mess we're in is. And that may just be that. My worry and my concern is that instead of looking at this final run as a platform for next season, I worry that if anything, we're going to, if the league is stronger, given who's coming into the league next season and who's going out, I worry that given that we just right now are like, guys, absorb it for a second. The club announced that they are planning for the next season by bringing back Seamus Coleman, Ashley Young, and hey, we're talking to Leeds about Jack Harrison. And they've admitted, and to their credit, that players are going to be sold this summer. That is almost certainly Jared Branthwaite, sadly, even though that'd be a miracle if we kept him, but he's almost certainly gone. That is Onana. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Calvert-Lewin, you sell this may be the highest you can sell Calvert-Lewin because he had an okay stretch.
Yeah, left on his deal as well.
And exactly. And I believe me, it's like I don't necessarily want that outcome. I think we'd be better with him here this season, but we also have two strikers that I don't think we've even started paying for yet in Shermidi and Beto. So that, you know, like, and we've got another one coming back from Brentford that we don't want. Like we have some really funny like these are these are objectively funny problems that we've got from a roster construction or a squad construction standpoint, even though they make me a little sad too. But without any knowledge of the ownership situation, for me, we can't just take for granted that, like, well, we'll get another center half this summer. Like, I am prepared, guys, for them to be like we do most summers, them going back into Finch Farm for beginning, you know, in July for training, and we haven't signed anybody. Like there's a really good chance that we've sold 2 players and not signed anyone. And I'm telling you, you're staring at some not great looking. Like next season, I don't have any reason to believe it's going to be any different. Dyche has certainly earned an extension, but it's going to be, you know, another season. But this is going to be really tough without any knowledge of what the ownership situation looks like.
Yeah, there's lots of pick and, you know, talk about over the summer. Dave, I think I'll put this to you, you know, to finish off on a little bit of a positive here. If I'd said to you at the start of this season, you know, that Everton would amass 48 points, whether take point deduction there or not, Everton would amass through wins, losses, and draws 48 points this season. They would win a Merseyside derby at Goodison. They would reach a domestic cup quarter final, or go to penalties to almost get to a semi-final. And you would get to the last day of the season without having to worry about the threat of relegation. I know I would have, and I know you would have. We would have absolutely jumped, done somersaults, jumped into swimming pools, dived over whatever we needed to do to take that. And that's what's happened. And everything what Rob said regarding the summer and the future, that's there. You know, put that in a box for a second. Just your thoughts on today, finishing off the season as a whole.
The issue I have with what you've said there, what both guys said there in terms of this season, I have something that just stays on my mind every time I agree with things like that, which is spot on what you said there, 48 points and all that sort of thing. The context of it, I can't turn that away from my thoughts on it, and by that I mean, and I found this repeatedly really difficult to explain, but finishing on 48 points wasn't a guarantee had we not had the season we've had, if you get what I mean. Those 8 points we would have had this season, if we'd have had them, there was no assumption we'd have stayed on 48 points simply because you just add them to the 40 that we made, is what I'm trying to say. That, I think, is a very easy way, and I'm not criticising anybody here, but I think that's a really easy way out of saying that it's been positive in that regard. I'll go in the opposite direction and say I would have bit your head off to give me 40 points. I will do for next season, and I will.
Well, forget about next season. Forget about next season.
All right. Don't go back to this season.
This season,
just
a derby win, close to a semi-final. We've won the most away games, I think, in a single season since Martinez's first season. I agree with you. There's a lot of things to look at, especially in that winless streak, which were worrying. But over the course of 38 games, we've got to look at it positively, surely.
I look on the manager positively, yeah. I think and I put this on my social media. I've been completely wrong about that man, because I won't go as far as saying I've wanted them out for a long time, but I haven't wanted him as Everton manager pretty much since we got him associated with us. Doesn't play any kind of style of football that I'm interested in or particularly want to watch. But then the flip side of that, which I completely hold my hands up to, is that he's given us a particular style of play that is probably a very unique a niche of play that he has that nobody else can probably give you, that will put a higher percentage of you staying in the Premier League, and that's what he's done. He's come and done that when we've absolutely needed it, so he deserves immense credit for that. He deserves the continuing season that he's going to get going forward as well. You know, I can see. I can see difficulties that he'll have, not in regards of how we play, but in terms of what people will start expecting from him, as we normally do. If we have a good season where we've still got Branthwaite starting in August and we've signed a striker and we've got a new ownership, people will be saying, "Do you know what, we should probably be fighting for European places." That
Oh,
happens quite
settle
quickly.
down.
Well,
I
I
don't
know
think that'll
exactly, but
happen.
people do that as fans, like you said there, mate.
Yeah,
People,
optimism naturally will go
yeah,
up
yeah,
if that scenario was
and that's
presented. Yeah,
absolutely fair. People should be like that in football. Absolutely right with that in football. So for me, overall, he's done a really, really good job. He can't be faulted. Other than the thing again that sticks in my mind is the way in which he makes substitutions, which is infuriating. That again, I keep working on the average of that. We didn't make a substitution until around about 74 minutes, which
Subs don't make a difference, Dave. Subs
which,
don't make any difference.
oh, mate,
not
honestly,
our subs anyway with our two goalkeepers.
exactly. But yeah, long-worded way of answering your question there, wasn't it? I would have absolutely taken it, given the
Yeah,
fact we had to get that win against Bournemouth a year ago to stay in the
yeah, it's
Premier
horrible.
League. The fact that 4-5 games ago we were guaranteed our place, regardless of how many points that were taken away from us. That's a top season for Everton, which is a really sad thing to say, but then it is really positive considering
It's sad,
everything
but
that's in the background.
it's sad, but
We
in the
won the
context
derby
of
this season. We won
yeah,
the home derby.
in the context of this scenario that is Everton Football Club, or the you know what's gone on with us in the last 3 years, I think the only way you can look at it is positive,
Oh
and
yeah, I mean, there are very few managers. Wasn't just to double on what I said there about Dice.
mm,
I can't think off the top of my head another manager that could have come in and kept Everton in the Premier League, and I think that's a major thing to say. But
yeah,
that's
I
something
agree.
I'm willing to put forward as my thoughts on Sean Dyche, and I never thought I'd be saying that.
No,
Let
I
alone
agree. I said to you, I didn't think there'd be any manager,
no, no,
Guardiola, Arteta, anyone with that squad of players who would have got us a
yeah,
victory in the
yeah,
derby. And
exactly,
I think you're absolutely right.
and it's difficult to think, that 1 in 15 run, which I banged on about because I didn't want him to stay, and that's only a few weeks, couple of months
Mm.
ago, because it was worse than what Lampard was sacked for. Um,
Benitez,
the really ironic thing of it all is there was nobody there to sack him, because I'm
Yeah.
pretty
Mm.
certain if there was, then he would have been, and we'd be sat here talking about ex-manager from wherever who'd have come
yeah,
in now. I think by chance we are with him where we would have been had there been people in there who could possibly sack the man. So it's a weird thing to say. So it feels like we have him, very fortunate to have him as our manager, to do what he's had to do to keep us in the Premier League. What goes forward with him now is anyone's guess, because there will be expectations regardless of what goes on in the summer.
yeah. I
Hey,
think. Go on, Rob.
Warren, the last thing I'll say on that is that I think what Dyche has taught me is that we sometimes think of getting a manager. I remember feeling this way about Silva to a degree. Like, wouldn't it be great if we got the manager who was going to be our manager for the next 20 years? Or like you think of them almost like you're trying to find a soulmate. And Dyche just made me kind of come to the notion of, like, you have to look at managers as, are they the man for right now? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
with Everton, now can be a lot longer than you think it's going to be, but Dyche is clearly the man for whatever this is now. And I hope, I think that the bigger risk would be, like, we're going to keep him, but I worry that Dyche doesn't sound real happy with all the instability. Like, he started to kind of talk about how this job was not what was sold to him, and that there's been more behind the scenes that people don't even know about. Like at the same time, I think every manager before him should have taught him that this was a crazy situation to come into. But Dyche is the right guy for right now. And
Mm-hmm.
Warren, the way you framed the season, like, look, I don't think he's not the guy I want to be my manager when we're, if we are in a different world and we're competitive and we're trying to win things on a more consistent basis. Like, I don't think he's that guy, but we're not in that world. That's a hypothetical.
No.
we're very far from. We right now, to me, hope is staying in the Premier League and just getting our financial house in order and having, owners that I don't have to feel morally, compromised about if they become our owners, which, hey, even if 2 out of 3 of those are true, I'm fine with that. But my point being that Dyche just taught me that Dyche is the right guy for right now. And, hopefully he's going to get us through this chapter at Everton and I think he's kind of positioned himself in that, framed himself that way. I don't think he views himself like Allardyce did as way bigger than he actually is. I think Dyche is very self-aware, and I have a lot of respect for that.
When you, I know you weren't saying this as a direct thing that you wanted, but when you referenced a manager being at a club for 20 years and Sean Dyche in the same sentence, I just pictured Mark Mose just shaking his head and going out for a very long walk somewhere.
Yeah.
But look, we're gonna leave it there. It has finished today. Arsenal 2, Everton 1. Everton on the bad end again of a bit of a dodgy decision towards the end there with VAR, but ultimately played really well in a game against the team that were vying for the league title at the end of the day. And just before we sign off, and Dave, I'm sure you want to jump in at some point as I say this, but just want to thank everybody. I've only had a small part to play on this show, but want to thank everybody for all their comments, listening to us, joining in with us, communicating with us, being a part of this wonderful show that we're all a part of. And I think it comes through the speakers when you listen that we're all good mates and we just love this football club and we love spending time together and talking about it. And whether it's good, bad or indifferent, it's been another fantastic season, not just for Everton, but for the podcast as well. And for me personally, it's been a pleasure to come on here and be a part of it. And Dave, as I said, I don't know if you want to add a few words in there as well.
No, you're absolutely spot on there. It's great to have Rob back for a cameo appearance as well, because I know he can't stick away. He always says he is, but he can't stick away. He always gets to the very end of it and says, "You still doing a pod?" Yeah, absolutely, mate, because you're always welcome. But the thing I just wanted to add before we go quickly is we don't stop across the summer.
I was going to say that.
Bagfuls of content coming your way, because obviously it's Goodison's last year. We're doing loads of stuff on that. Me and Les are going to start getting together and putting our heads together on various things that we're going to be doing as well. Mailbag continues, doesn't it, Les? So people can sit on the pool and listen to us taking the piss out of each other and answering all those questions. So yeah, just stick with us. There's still going to be mounds of content, mounds of podcasts. We don't go away, so hopefully you don't get sick enough of us. And yeah, let's hope it's a nice summer to have.
I think it'll be a busy summer regardless. I think whether we're signing players, not signing players, I think it's going to be a very interesting summer, shall we say. And I think, we can sort of put to bed the worry and the sort of torment that comes with following this football club for a couple of weeks. And then I'm sure we'll all start worrying about it again ahead of the new season. And as you mentioned there, the final season at Goodison Park. But yeah, once again, finished Arsenal 2, Everton 1. That concludes the 23-24 season. As Dave mentioned there, keep listening to us, keep listening to all our content throughout either Mailbag or whatever it might be, both on your subscribers weekly and also the main weekly as well on the Blue Room. Just thanks again to everyone for listening. Those who are travelling back from London, have a safe journey. And all that's left to me finish off with is to say, up those Toffees. Have a good one. All the best.